George Miller, we're about to speak about your last film choice, but before we get to that, let me ask you another question about Furiosa and the Mad Max world that you've created. Do you have more stories in your head? Is there more that you can explore from this world?
When we had to tell the story of Fury Road, which happened over a compressed 3 days, in order to even begin to tell the story, in order to design the story, in order for the actors to understand where the characters come from, all the actors, we had to write all the backstories. So Nico Lathuris and I wrote the story of Furiosa, the 18 years before we encounter her in Fury Road, and we wrote the story of Max in the year before we meet him in Fury Road. And in that, we not only put it in words, we also designed or helped design so much of the world and gave a backstory to not only the characters, but also every vehicle, every prop, every costume, everything. Everybody had to understand that. So now that we've done the Furiosa story, there's another story, which is the Max story to tell. If all the planets align in the future, I'll give that a shot too in one way or another.
Yay! I can't wait for that. Hopefully it happens. So your final pick for us tonight is The Battle of Algiers from 1966, directed by Gillo Pontecorvo. This is a very powerful and effective war film. Tell us about when you first saw this film, because I heard that you were supposed to be studying in university and you skipped class and had yourself a little movie marathon.
You know, I was just very interested in cinema without any regard to ever making films. I went to medical school with my twin brother, and he had much better writing than I had. And we'd sit in lectures, and quite often I'd get his notes from lectures. And I'd go off to the movies, and I'd see everything. In those days, you could see virtually everything that was playing. One particular day, I was catching the bus in the city, and I walked past a theatre, and there was a poster in front of the theatre, and it had the V sign, and there were two legs, female legs underneath, and it had MASH. I had no idea what it was, but I walked into the cinema, and of course it was Robert Altman's MASH. I saw the film. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. I walked out of the cinema into the daylight, and I walked straight back in and went to the next session. And I came out again with that high, and I walked through the city of Sydney, and I went past an art theatre, and this was at night by then, and there was a film showing in an art cinema, The Battle for Algiers, and I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of it, and I walked in and watched that film, which was a world apart from its style from MASH, and yet had similar themes. It was almost a documentary. It was so authentic in its performances, the way they shot that film. You felt you were there. And in that one day that I saw those two films, I was so high on cinema that I said to myself, somehow I'm going to try to make movies one day. That was the day that changed me. And The Battle for Algiers was astonishing, I believe, but particularly in contrast with MASH. That was a big day for me.
You know, maybe we'll introduce this film to some people now who've never seen it. So, George Miller, thank you again for joining me on TCM.
Thank you, Alicia. Thanks again.
Let's take a look at the film. Here it is from 1966, The Battle of Algiers. Wow, what a film. That was The Battle of Algiers from 1966, directed by Gillo Pontecorvo. And the guy who suggested this film for us tonight is a brilliant filmmaker himself. Is my compatriot from Australia, Dr. George Miller. So, George, when you think about this movie and the type of influence it's had, I mean, it's been studied by governments and terrorist groups and soccer teams and also filmmakers as well. Would you say it's had a direct influence on your filmmaking style, or is it just kind of bubbling in the background with your interest in cinema?
Well, I've never made a film like that, which had that degree of authenticity where you felt that you were really there in that world, almost a documentary style, even though it was a very well-constructed narrative. but certainly its influenced me is something you strive for. If I'm making a film like Fury Road, where we're doing a scene with a lot of characters, we're trying to create basically a space where they're behaving as authentically as they can.
Now let's talk more about Furiosa. This is your latest installment in the Mad Max series. It's quite amazing when you think about how long you've been involved with the Mad Max world. It's like 45 years in total. The first film was an independent Australian film. Now it's a huge blockbuster franchise. Do you still get excited about this world? Are you still as excited as you were at the beginning?
I think that goes without saying. I mean, they're hard films to make. I won't say addicted to them, but they kind of invaded me in a way. And I think the reason is that they are allegorical, like the American Western. And allegory is I think, fundamental to all storytelling. They're films that are timeless. That even though the Mad Max or Furiosa films are set in a future, let's say 45 to 50 years after the fall of man, they basically go back to much more elemental behavior, neo-medieval, let's just say. So it's a timeless behavior, and it allows us to reflect on the sort of stuff that's going on around us in the world today. So they're kind of timeless in that way. They're not topical, and that's a very, very seductive world for a storyteller.
Well, George Miller, I wish we could keep talking forever. This has been such a pleasure. I'm so glad that I was the one who got to speak with you. I mean, such a thrill for me, so thank you.
Fantastic. And doing things like this with you is incredibly nourishing, I must say. It really is. Very grateful. Thank you.
And that's it for George and I, but keep watching TCM now to see Kirk Douglas in Lust for Life.